The Las Vegas morning sun glinted off the Thorn Imperial's glass facade, casting diamond-like reflections across the strip. In his penthouse office, Alexander Thorn stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, admiring the empire that would soon be truly his. The morning paper on his desk announced his engagement to Catherine Ashcroft, complete with a photo of them at the charity gala where he'd proposed. Everything was falling perfectly into place. "Mr. Thorn?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The wedding planner is here with the final guest list for your approval." Alex smiled, his hand unconsciously moving to the inside pocket of his tailored suit, where a special invitation waited. "Send her in." The wedding planner, Monica Chen, no relation to the doctor he would soon meet, bustled in with her tablet and an array of samples. "Mr. Thorn, we've managed to accommodate all 500 guests on the Ashcrofts list, plus your additions. The grand ballroom will be transformed exactly as Miss Catherine requested, all white roses and crystal, very traditional." "Excellent," Alex nodded, only half listening as he pulled out the cream-colored envelope from his pocket. "I have one more invitation to add. This one I'll deliver personally." Monica glanced at the name written in elegant calligraphy, Isabella Winters. "Of course, sir. Should I add her to the family section, or general seating will be fine?" Alex cut her off, his expression hardening slightly. "She's an old friend." After the wedding planner left, Alex sank into his leather chair, studying the invitation. 8 years had passed since Isabella walked away from him, choosing her budding architecture career over their relationship. 8 years of building his empire, proving himself worthy of the Thorn name, and now, finally, he would show her exactly what she had given up. His phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Daddy's lawyers are finalizing the merger papers. Everything's on track for the announcement after the wedding, love you." Alex sent back a suitably affectionate response, then pulled up a different screen, Isabella's LinkedIn profile. She'd done well for herself, founding a successful architecture firm in Los Angeles, the same firm that had once offered her the internship she'd chosen over him. Her latest projects included several award-winning medical facilities, her talent evident in every design. "Your 3 p.m. appointment with Dr. Morrison has been confirmed," his assistant's voice interrupted his browsing. She emphasized the importance of completing these tests before the wedding. Alex rubbed his chest absently, where the strange pains had been occurring more frequently. Probably just stress from the wedding preparations and merger negotiations. Catherine had insisted he get checked out before their honeymoon, and he'd agreed mostly to stop her worrying. Richard Thorn strode into the office without knocking, as was his right as both father and CEO. "The board is thrilled about the Ashcroft merger. Catherine's father has already drawn up plans for our expansion into Asian markets." "Everything's coming together perfectly," Alex agreed, quickly tucking Isabella's invitation back into his pocket. His father had never approved of that relationship, constantly reminding Alex that the Thorns needed to align themselves with the right kind of people. "Son," Richard's voice softened slightly, "your mother would have been proud to see you taking your rightful place in the family business. The Thorn name means something in this city, and your marriage to Catherine will only strengthen that legacy." Alex nodded, ignoring the familiar pang at the mention of his mother. Sarah Thorn had been gone for 5 years now, but her absence still felt raw, especially with the wedding approaching. She had been the only one who knew how deeply Isabella's departure had hurt him. "The guest list is finalized," he told his father, careful to keep his tone neutral. 500 of Las Vegas's finest, plus a few special additions. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. "Alexander, this merger is too important for any of your usual dramatic gestures. The Ashcrofts are old money, traditional. They expect things done a certain way." "Trust me, father," Alex smiled, patting the pocket holding Isabella's invitation. "Everything is exactly as it should be." As his father left, Alex returned to the window, watching the desert sun climb higher over his domain. From this height, the city seemed to bow before him, its glittering lights a testament to the Thorn family's influence. Yet something darker lurked beneath his triumphant smile as he thought of Isabella receiving his invitation. She had humiliated him 8 years ago, choosing career over love, claiming he was too focused on his family's expectations. Well, now she would see exactly what those expectations had built. He imagined her face when she saw him standing at the altar with Catherine, when she realized that the man she had rejected was now the king of Las Vegas hospitality. The intercom buzzed again. "Mr. Thorn," Dr. Morrison's office is confirming your appointment for 3 p.m. Thank you, he replied, unconsciously rubbing his chest, where the strange pains had been occurring more frequently. Just wedding jitters, he told himself. Nothing could possibly go wrong now. After tomorrow he would have everything: the girl, the empire, and the satisfaction of showing Isabella Winters exactly what she had walked away from. If only he knew how spectacularly his perfect plan was about to unravel. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Alexander Thorne's penthouse office at the Thorne Imperial. His fingers hovered over the embossed invitation, the heavy cream paper a stark contrast against his mahogany desk. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, the Las Vegas Strip stretched endlessly, a testament to his family's legacy in the hospitality industry. Yet today that view offered little comfort as he contemplated the name he had just written: Isabella Winters. "Mr. Thorne?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Dr. Morrison's office is on line 1. Alex's heart skipped a beat, literally and figuratively. He'd been avoiding this call all afternoon, knowing it would bring the test results he both dreaded and needed before his wedding. With trembling fingers, he picked up the phone. "Alexander, I have your results." Dr. Morrison's voice was grave. "I'm afraid it's not good news. The genetic testing confirms you have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the same condition that affected your biological father." The words hit him like a physical blow. Biological father. The phrase seemed foreign, wrong somehow. "That's impossible," he managed. "My father is perfectly healthy." A heavy pause followed. "Alexander, according to your genetic profile, Richard Thorne isn't your biological father. I assumed you knew." The room seemed to spin around him. All his life he'd been the spitting image of Richard Thorne, or so everyone said. The prestigious Thorne name, the legacy, the empire. Had it all been built on a lie? "There's more," Dr. Morrison continued gently. "This condition is hereditary, Alexander. If you have children, there's a 50% chance they could inherit it. And given the severity of your case, without proper treatment and lifestyle changes, you're looking at a significantly shortened life expectancy." Alex's hand tightened on the phone. "How shortened?" "With aggressive treatment, you have about a 50% chance of surviving the next 5 years." The invitation to Isabella seemed to mock him from his desk. His grand plan of revenge suddenly felt hollow, meaningless in the face of this devastating news. Yet something else nagged at him. A memory of Isabella's tearful face the night she left, words she'd tried to say that he'd refused to hear. "I need to know everything about my biological father," he demanded. "And I need complete discretion, doctor. No one can know about this, especially not before the wedding tomorrow." After ending the call, Alex sat in the growing darkness of his office, the weight of secrets, both old and new, threatening to crush him. The invitation to Isabella still lay before him, but now it represented something entirely different. Was it possible she had known something back then? Was that why she'd really left? His phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Final wedding rehearsal in an hour. Don't be late. Daddy's announcing the merger to the press afterward." Alex stared at the message, his perfectly orchestrated life crumbling around him. The merger, the wedding, his very identity. Everything was built on foundations as unstable as the Nevada desert sand. And somewhere out there, Isabella Winters was about to receive an invitation that would set in motion events none of them were prepared for. With shaking hands, he reached for the invitation again. His plan had been to show Isabella everything she had lost by leaving him. Instead, he was about to discover everything he had lost by letting her go. The Thorne Imperial's grand ballroom sparkled like a diamond in the desert sun. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic rainbows across the sea of white roses and golden accents, while 500 of Las Vegas's elite mingled in their finest attire. Catherine Ashcroft was secluded in the bridal suite, while Alex paced in his private chamber, his hand occasionally brushing his chest, where the weight of yesterday's diagnosis seemed to press against his heart. 10 minutes until we begin, Mr. Thorne, the wedding coordinator announced through the door. The guests are being seated. Alex straightened his bow tie, pushing aside thoughts of genetic tests and biological fathers. This was his moment of triumph, and he wouldn't let anything spoil it. He'd even positioned his assistant near the entrance, ready to alert him the moment Isabella Winters arrived. He wanted to see her face when she witnessed everything she had given up. But as the minutes ticked by, his assistant remained silent. Had Isabella decided not to come? The thought bothered him more than it should, especially on his wedding day. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. "Son?" Richard Thorne entered, his familiar presence both comforting and now somehow foreign in light of yesterday's revelation. "It's time." Alex followed his father, no, the man who had raised him, toward the ballroom. The wedding march began to play, its notes carrying across the gathered crowd. Catherine would be making her entrance soon, the perfect bride for the perfect merger. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, until it wasn't. The first sign that something was wrong came when a murmur rippled through the crowd. Alex, standing at the altar, saw heads turning toward the back of the ballroom. His heart nearly stopped when he saw her. Isabella Winters stood in the doorway, more beautiful than he remembered in a simple blue dress that made her look like she'd stepped out of his dreams or his nightmares. But she wasn't alone. Holding each of her hands were two small boys, perhaps 8 years old, with dark hair and familiar features that made Alex's blood run cold. The boys looked exactly like the childhood photos of him that hung in the Thorne family gallery. The wedding march faltered as Catherine appeared at the other end of the aisle, her expression changing from bridal radiance to confusion as she noticed no one was looking her way. All eyes were fixed on Isabella and the twins, who had begun making their way to an empty row near the middle of the room. "Alex?" Richard's voice beside him was sharp with warning, but Alex barely heard it. His carefully constructed world was tilting on its axis as his mind raced through calculations. 8 years. The boys looked about 8 years old. Isabella had left him 8 years and 9 months ago. One of the boys, they were identical twins, looked directly at him, and Alex saw his own eyes staring back at him. The same eyes that looked out from his childhood photos. The eyes he'd always thought came from Richard Thorne. The wedding march had stopped completely now. Catherine stood frozen halfway down the aisle, her father rising from his seat with a thunderous expression. The whispers were growing louder, the guests connecting the same dots Alex was connecting with devastating clarity. "Those children," Richard breathed beside him, his face draining of color. Before Alex could respond, a commotion broke out in the middle of the ballroom. One of the twins had stumbled, clutching his chest in a gesture Alex recognized with horror from his own recent episodes. The boy's face had gone pale, his breathing labored. "Ethan?" Isabella's cry cut through the chaos as she reached for her son. "Not now, baby, please." Alex found himself moving before he could think, crossing the space between them in long strides, his own chest tight with a mixture of panic and recognition. He reached them just as the boy's knees buckled. "He needs a doctor." Isabella's voice was thick with tears as she cradled Ethan. "He has a heart condition, they both do. That's why I came. That's why I had to—" The other twin, standing close to his mother, looked at Alex with a mixture of curiosity and fear. "Are you really our father?" he asked, his voice carrying in the suddenly silent ballroom. The question hung in the air like a thunderclap, and Alex felt the weight of 500 stares bearing down on him. Behind him, he could hear Catherine's heels clicking rapidly toward the exit, her father's angry voice calling after her. But none of that seemed to matter as he knelt beside the boy who was so obviously his son, watching him struggle with the same condition that had just been diagnosed in his own heart. "We need medical help immediately," he called out, his voice steady despite the earthquake happening in his world. "And someone call Dr. Morrison. Tell him it's an emergency." As the ballroom erupted into chaos, Alex met Isabella's tear-filled eyes over their son's head. The revenge he'd planned had backfired spectacularly, revealing a truth far more explosive than anything he could have imagined. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible realization was forming. The genetic heart condition he'd inherited from his unknown biological father wasn't just threatening his life anymore. It was threatening the lives of 2 children he'd never known existed. The private hospital suite at Desert Springs Medical Center was a far cry from the opulent wedding venue they'd occupied hours earlier. Alex stood at the window, watching the Vegas lights flicker in the distance while medical machines beeped steadily behind him. On the bed, Ethan slept peacefully, medication having stabilized his condition. Noah sat in a chair beside his brother, refusing to leave despite the late hour. Isabella paced the room like a caged tiger, her elegant blue dress now wrinkled, her dark hair falling from its careful arrangement. 8 years had changed her in subtle ways, There was a strength in her bearing that hadn't been there before, a protective fierceness that came from raising two boys alone. "Why didn't you tell me?" Alex's voice was barely above a whisper, mindful of Ethan's rest. "Tell you?" Isabella's laugh was bitter but quiet. "I tried, Alex. The night I left, I tried to tell you I was pregnant, but you were so angry, so wrapped up in your family's expectations, you wouldn't even let me speak. And then when I tried to contact you later—" "What do you mean, tried to contact me?" Alex turned from the window, his face pale in the fluorescent light. "I called the hotel dozens of times. I wrote letters. But your father's secretary always said you were unavailable, and the letters were returned unopened." She glanced at Noah, who appeared to be sleeping in his chair but was probably listening to every word. "Eventually, I got the message. The mighty Thorns wanted nothing to do with a pregnant architecture student who didn't fit their grand plan. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. I never got any messages. I never knew about any letters." Alex ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Isabella, I swear if I had known—" A knock at the door interrupted them. Richard Thorne stood in the doorway, looking older than Alex had ever seen him. Behind him, Dr. Morrison waited with a grave expression. "We need to talk," Richard said, his voice heavy with unspoken burdens. "All of us." Noah stirred in his chair, his eyes opening to study the newcomers warily. Isabella moved closer to her sons, a protective instinct Alex was only beginning to understand. "I've reviewed both boys' medical records," Dr. Morrison began once they had gathered in the room's sitting area. "They have the same condition as Alex, hereditary hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's remarkably similar to their grandfather's case." "Their grandfather?" Isabella looked confused. "But Richard, you're healthy." "He's not talking about me," Richard's voice cracked. "Alex, there's something I should have told you long ago, something your mother and I agreed to keep secret." The weight of unspoken truths seemed to press down on all of them as Richard pulled out an old photograph from his wallet. It showed a young couple, the man bearing a striking resemblance to Alex and the twins. "This is Jonathan Hayes," Richard said softly. "Your biological father. He was my best friend in college, and he married your mother Sarah first. When he developed heart problems in his early 30s, they discovered it was genetic. He didn't make it to see your first birthday." Alex stared at the photograph, seeing his own features, his son's features, reflected in the face of a man he'd never known. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Sarah was devastated. We grew closer in our grief, fell in love, and eventually married. You were so young. We thought it would be easier if you just knew me as your father. We planned to tell you when you were older. But then Sarah got sick, and after we lost her—" Richard's voice broke. "I convinced myself I was protecting you." Isabella had gone very still. "You knew," she said to Richard, her voice trembling with anger. "When I tried to contact Alex about the pregnancy, you knew about the genetic condition. You knew these boys might inherit it." Richard couldn't meet her eyes. "I thought I was protecting the family. The business was in a crucial phase of expansion. A scandal would have ruined everything we'd built. I never imagined—" "You never imagined what?" Alex's voice was dangerous, quiet. "That your lies would nearly cost me my son's life today? That your precious business reputation was worth more than my children knowing their father?" Noah had moved to stand beside his mother, his small hand finding hers. Despite his youth, his expression was full of understanding beyond his years. "Is that why we get tired like Mom says Dad used to? Because of our real grandpa?" The innocent question cut through the tension like a knife. Alex looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw not just his own features, but his own vulnerability. These boys had inherited more than just his looks and a heart condition. They had inherited a legacy of secrets and lies that had nearly destroyed their family before they even knew they had one. "I think," Dr. Morrison interjected gently, "what's most important now is focusing on treatment. All three of you, Alex and the boys, need to begin a comprehensive cardiac care program. The condition is serious, but with proper management and monitoring—" Alex hardly heard the rest of the doctor's words. His mind was spinning with revelations about his father, his sons, his own identity. The revenge he'd planned against Isabella had led him straight to the truth he never knew he needed. But that truth came with a terrible price, the knowledge that his own children faced the same uncertain future he did. In the hospital bed, Ethan stirred slightly, his face peaceful in sleep, unaware of how his world had changed forever. Noah watched his brother with the protective devotion only a twin could understand, while Isabella stood guard over both of them, years of single motherhood evident in her stance. And Alex realized with stunning clarity that his carefully planned future, the merger, the wedding, the empire, had crumbled away to reveal something far more precious and far more frightening. A second chance he never knew he needed, with a family he never knew he had. The morning headlines screamed across every major news outlet in Las Vegas. Thorne Empire heir's secret family revealed at wedding. Alex stared at his tablet, scrolling through article after article, each one more sensational than the last. The Thorne Imperial's executive boardroom, usually a haven of calm sophistication, now felt like a war room. The Ashcrofts have officially withdrawn their investment, his CFO reported grimly. Their legal team delivered the paperwork this morning. Without their backing, the expansion plans for the new properties in Singapore and Dubai are dead in the water, Alex finished, his voice hollow. The empire he'd spent years building was crumbling, yet somehow it didn't seem to matter as much as it would have just days ago. His mind kept drifting to the hospital room he'd left early this morning, where his sons, were undergoing more tests. The boardroom door burst open, and Catherine Ashcroft strode in, still wearing yesterday's wedding dress, though now it was wrinkled and stained with what looked like red wine. Her eyes were wild, mascara smeared beneath them. "You bastard," she spat, ignoring the startled executives. "All this time, while you were playing the devoted fiancé, you had children with another woman? Do you have any idea what this has done to my family's reputation?" Alex rose slowly, gesturing for the board members to leave. They filed out quickly, avoiding Catherine's furious gaze. "Kate, I didn't know about the twins. If I had—" "Oh, save it." She laughed bitterly. "The great Alexander Thorne, always in control, always with a plan. Was this part of your plan? Humiliating me in front of the entire city? My father's withdrawing every penny from your precious hotels. We're going to watch your empire collapse, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it. I understand you're angry." Alex kept his voice steady, though his chest tightened painfully. Whether from stress or his condition, he wasn't sure anymore. "But those boys are innocent in all this. They're also sick, Kate. They inherited the same heart condition I have." Something flickered in Catherine's eyes, a moment of sympathy quickly buried under rage. "So what? Now you expect everyone to feel sorry for you? Poor Alex Thorne, the sick boy with his secret family? Is that how you're going to spin this to the press?" "I'm not spinning anything." Alex moved to the window, looking out at the Vegas skyline that had always represented his future. "The truth is, I invited Isabella to our wedding for all the wrong reasons. I wanted revenge for her leaving me, but I was the one who wouldn't listen when she tried to tell me about the pregnancy. I was too caught up in being the perfect Thorne heir, in living up to expectations that weren't even real." "What are you talking about? I'm not even Richard Thorne's biological son." The words still felt strange on his tongue. "My whole life has been built on carefully managed lies. But I'm done with lies, Kate. Those boys deserve better than what I had." Catherine stared at him for a long moment, her anger seeming to deflate slightly. "You really didn't know about them?" "No. And now they have the same genetic heart condition that killed my biological father. A condition that gives all three of us about a 50% chance of survival over the next 5 years." Alex turned back to face her. "So you see, Kate, your father pulling his investment isn't actually the worst news I've received this week." She sank into one of the boardroom chairs, the massive engagement ring on her finger catching the morning light. Without a word, she slipped it off and placed it on the table between them. "I loved you, Alex," she said quietly. "Or at least, I loved who I thought you were. I'm sorry, Kate. You deserved better than being part of my revenge plan against Isabella." "Yes, I did." She stood, smoothing her ruined wedding dress with dignity. "I hope you figure out who you really are, Alex. And I hope those boys survive. They shouldn't have to pay for their father's mistakes." After she left, Alex sat alone in the boardroom, surrounded by the trappings of success that had defined his life. His phone buzzed with a message from Isabella. "Ethan's asking for you, Noah too. They have questions only you can answer." His chest tightened again, but this time he recognized it wasn't just the cardiomyopathy. It was fear. Fear of failing these boys the way he'd failed everyone else in his life. fear of not having enough time to make things right. The empire his family had built might be collapsing around him, but for the first time in his life, Alex Thorne was beginning to understand what really mattered. With shaking hands, he picked up his phone and typed a reply to Isabella. "I'm on my way, and this time I promise I'll listen." Isabella Winters had imagined this moment countless times over the past 8 years. Alex meeting their sons, learning the truth, facing the consequences of their past. But none of her imaginings had prepared her for the reality of watching him sit between their boys' hospital beds, awkwardly attempting to explain the rules of poker to 2 eager 8-year-olds. "Mom never lets us play cards," Noah said, shooting her a mischievous grin that was pure Alex. "She says gambling is a waste of money." "Your mother is a very wise woman," Alex replied, catching Isabella's eye across the room. "But poker isn't just about gambling. It's about strategy, reading people, knowing when to hold on and when to let go. Skills I'm only just learning myself." Ethan, still pale but recovering from his episode at the wedding, studied his cards with intense concentration. "Did you really build all those big hotels, Dad? The ones with our last name on them?" The word "Dad" seemed to hit Alex like a physical blow. Isabella watched him struggle to maintain his composure, saw the mixture of joy and pain cross his face. "Actually," he said carefully, "your grandfather Richard built most of them. I just helped expand the business, but now—" He trailed off, clearly unsure how to explain the current crisis to children. "Now you're going to help us get better instead," Noah supplied with 8-year-old logic. "Mom says that's more important than any hotel." Isabella's heart swelled with pride at her son's words. Despite raising them alone, despite all the hardships and fears, especially when their heart condition first manifested, she'd somehow managed to give them the right values. "Your mum is right again," Alex said softly. "I've spent my whole life trying to build something impressive, trying to prove myself worthy of the Thorne name. But it turns out I'm not even really a Thorne." "Does that mean we're not really Thornes either?" Ethan asked, his small face scrunching with worry. "Hey," Isabella interjected, moving closer to the beds. "You two are exactly who you've always been. Names don't make a family. Love does." "Your mother is 3 for 3 on the wisdom front." Alex managed a small smile. "And you know what? Maybe we can build something new together, something better than any hotel." A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Morrison entered, followed by a tall woman in a lab coat. "Alex, Isabella, I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Chen. She's one of the leading researchers in genetic cardiomyopathy treatments. She's interested in your family's case." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her eyes bright with professional interest. "The genetic markers in your family line are quite unique. We're doing promising work with experimental treatments that could significantly improve the survival rates for cases like yours." "Experimental treatments?" Isabella felt her protective instincts flare. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "A combination of cutting-edge therapies carefully monitored," Dr. Chen explained. "It would require regular treatments, extensive testing, but the potential benefits—" "The potential costs, you mean?" Alex interrupted. "With the Ashcroft investment gone, the company's finances are—" "I can help with that," Isabella said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "My architecture firm has been very successful. I've saved everything I could over the years, planning for the boys' future. Their medical care is all that matters now." Alex stared at her with a mixture of admiration and shame. "Isabella, I can't let you—" "You can, and you will," she cut him off. "These are our sons, Alex. We make decisions about their future together now." The boys had abandoned their card game, watching this exchange with intense interest. "Does this mean we're staying in Las Vegas?" Noah asked hopefully. "Can we see the hotels with our name on them?" "Actually," Alex said slowly, an idea forming in his expression, "maybe we could do more than just see them. Dr. Chen, would it be possible to set up a research facility specifically focused on genetic heart conditions? The Thorne Imperial has an entire unused wing that was meant for the SPA expansion." Dr. Chen's eyes lit up. "A dedicated research and treatment center. With the right funding, the possibilities would be extraordinary." Isabella watched Alex's face as he began to animate with purpose. This was a different man than the one who had sent her that spiteful wedding invitation. This was someone beginning to understand that true legacy had nothing to do with building empires. "We could help other families," he continued, warming to the idea. Other children with this condition. Transform the hotels into something more than just luxury resorts. Like superhero headquarters, Ethan suggested, making everyone laugh. Something like that? Alex smiled, reaching out to ruffle his son's hair, his first natural paternal gesture. But first, we need to focus on getting you boys stronger. And that means I need to get stronger too, face some hard truths, make some real changes. Isabella found herself moving closer, drawn by the sincerity in his voice. Changes aren't easy, she said softly. Believe me, I know. But you don't have to face them alone anymore. Their eyes met over their sons' heads, 8 years of pain and misunderstanding beginning to dissolve in the face of what really mattered. The boys had resumed their card game, already adapting to their new reality with the resilience of childhood. Full house, Noah declared triumphantly, laying down his cards. Just like us, Ethan added with a grin. We're a full house now too, right? Alex's hand found Isabella's, squeezing gently. Right, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We're all in this together now. 3 months had passed since the wedding that never was, and the Thorn Imperial's West Wing had been transformed. Where luxury spa suites were once planned, state-of-the-art medical equipment now hummed. Dr. Chen's team had worked tirelessly to create a research center that balanced clinical efficiency with comfortable, child-friendly spaces. Alex stood in the newly completed family waiting room, watching through the observation window as Noah underwent his latest round of tests. The boy was chatting animatedly with the technician, his resilience a constant source of amazement. Beside him, Isabella reviewed architectural plans for the next phase of renovations. If we move this wall, she indicated on the blueprint, we can create a larger recreation space for the children undergoing treatment. Something that feels less medical, more like a normal playground. Whatever you think is best, Alex replied, his attention divided between the plans and his son. You're the expert here. Isabella set down the plans, studying his profile. You haven't slept much, have you? There's too much to do. The board meeting this morning was... He trailed off, rubbing his chest absently. Let's just say not everyone is happy about redirecting so much of the company's resources into medical research. Alex, Isabella's voice held a warning note. Dr. Chen said, stress is one of the worst things for your condition. You need to take care of yourself, not just for your sake, but for the boys. He turned to face her, struck once again by how natural it felt to have her by his side, planning and problem-solving together like they used to years ago. I know, it's just... The quarterly numbers are down 30%. The tourism industry is already calling it the end of the Thorn Empire. Maybe it's time to let the empire fall, she said softly, and build something better in its place. Before Alex could respond, Noah bounded out of the testing room, his face bright with excitement. Dad, Dr. Chen says my numbers are better. Can we go see Ethan now? He's probably done with his physical therapy. Alex felt his stress melt away at his son's enthusiasm. Of course, buddy. Lead the way. They found Ethan in the physical therapy room, working with his therapist on exercises designed to strengthen his heart safely. Richard Thorne, still grandpa to the boys despite the revelations about Alex's parentage, sat nearby, watching with obvious pride. Noah's tests went well, Alex reported, helping Ethan with his final stretches. Dr. Chen seems optimistic about both of your progress. Does that mean we can start school here soon? Ethan asked eagerly. Noah and I miss having other kids around. Isabella and Alex exchanged glances. They'd been discussing this very issue late into the night. Moving the boys from their life in Los Angeles hadn't been easy, but the specialized care they needed was here in Las Vegas. Actually, Isabella began, we've been talking about something even better. What would you think about having school right here in the hotel? Both boys' eyes widened. In the hotel, Noah echoed. We're thinking of creating a learning center, Alex explained, warming to the idea as he spoke, for all the children who need long-term treatment. So you can keep up with your studies and make friends who understand what you're going through. Like a secret school for kids with special hearts. Ethan's imagination caught fire. That would be so cool. Richard cleared his throat, emotion evident in his voice. I've been making some calls to my old contacts in the education sector. Several excellent teachers are interested in the project. Alex looked at his father, for despite everything, that's who Richard would always be to him. The past months had been difficult for them both, working through decades of secrets and lies. But watching Richard with the twins, seeing how deeply he loved them despite the lack of biological connection, had helped Alex understand that family was about more than DNA. The Thorn hotels were always about giving people a temporary escape from their problems, Alex said thoughtfully. But maybe they can be about something more permanent now, giving people hope, real solutions, a community. Speaking of community, Isabella interjected, checking her phone, the parents' support group meeting starts in 10 minutes. Several new families are joining today. The support group had been Isabella's idea, a place where parents of children with genetic heart conditions could share their experiences, fears, and hopes. It had quickly become the heart of their growing community. "Can we go too?" Noah asked. Madison from therapy said her mum's bringing cookies. "Homework first," Isabella said firmly, though her eyes twinkled. "Then cookies." As the boys groaned good-naturedly, Alex felt a familiar tightness in his chest, but this time it wasn't his condition. It was the realization of how much he'd gained by losing everything he thought he wanted. His revenge plan had backfired spectacularly, giving him instead a chance to heal not just his family, but others like them. "Alex," Isabella's voice brought him back to the present. "The contractors need final approval on the pediatric wing designs. Want to review them before the support group?" He looked around at his family, Isabella with her brilliant mind and compassionate heart, the boys with their boundless enthusiasm, Richard trying so hard to make amends, and felt something settle in his soul. "Actually," he said, "why don't you take the lead on this? You've always had better vision than me." Isabella's smile was worth more than any luxury hotel could ever be. The autumn sun cast long shadows through the Thorn Imperial's newly installed floor-to-ceiling windows, designed to flood the medical wing with natural light. Isabella stood in what would soon be the children's recreation area, watching a group of construction workers install safety equipment under her supervision. The space was slowly taking shape, transforming from a cold, clinical environment into something warm and welcoming. "Ms. Winters," one of the workers called out, "we found some old blueprints behind this wall. Looks like the original hotel plans." Isabella took the rolled-up papers, a wave of nostalgia washing over her as she recognized her own handwriting in the margins. These were from her internship days, when she and Alex had spent countless hours dreaming up improvements to the hotel's design. Back then, their biggest concern had been maximizing luxury and profit. "Mom!" Noah's voice echoed down the corridor. "Dad's doing it again!" Sighing, Isabella hurried toward the executive offices, where she found Alex buried in paperwork, his face pale with exhaustion. Noah stood in the doorway, arms crossed in a perfect imitation of his mother's disappointed stance. "You promised Dr. Chen you'd rest after lunch," Isabella reminded him, taking in his disheveled appearance. "The boys tell me everything, you know." "Tattletale." Alex mock glared at Noah, who just grinned unrepentantly. "Hey, we made a deal," Noah shrugged. "We take our medicine and do our exercises. You follow doctor's orders too." "Using my own children against me," Alex grumbled. But he was already standing up, swaying slightly as the color drained from his face. Isabella was at his side instantly, steadying him. "This is exactly why you need rest. The renovation plans can wait." "The board meeting tomorrow?" he protested weakly. "I'll handle it," she said firmly. "Richard's already agreed to present the new financial projections. The pediatric wing is actually showing better numbers than the luxury suites ever did." Alex allowed her to guide him to the comfortable sofa they'd installed in his office for exactly this purpose. Noah immediately claimed the spot next to him, pulling out a deck of cards, their favorite father-son bonding activity. "Where's your brother?" Alex asked, automatically shuffling the deck. "Physical therapy with Grandpa Richard," Noah replied. "He said he's going to be strong enough to swim soon." Isabella watched them begin their game, her heart full of conflicting emotions. The past few months had been a whirlwind of changes, challenges, and unexpected blessings. The boys were responding well to Dr. Chen's experimental treatments, but Alex's condition had been more stubborn, perhaps exacerbated by years of stress and his reluctance to slow down. "I found our old blueprints," she said softly, unrolling the papers on his desk. "Remember when we used to argue about where to put the VIP lounges?" Alex looked up from his cards, a familiar warmth in his eyes. "You always said we should focus more on function than luxury. Guess you were right all along. Mom's always right, Noah declared, laying down a winning hand. That's why she's in charge of building the new stuff. Oh, is that what she told you? Alex laughed, then winced slightly, pressing a hand to his chest. Isabella didn't miss the gesture. Noah, honey, why don't you go check on your brother? It's almost time for his session to end. Once they were alone, Isabella sat beside Alex, taking his hand. You have to take better care of yourself. The boys need you. She hesitated, then continued softly. I need you. Alex entwined his fingers with hers, a gesture that felt both new and familiar. I'm not very good at being vulnerable, he admitted. All those years of trying to be the perfect Thorn heir, I guess I forgot how to just be human. Well, you have two excellent teachers in Ethan and Noah, Isabella smiled. They've never tried to be anything but themselves. They're remarkable kids, Alex said proudly. You did an amazing job with them, Isabella. I'm sorry I missed so much. You're here now. She squeezed his hand. That's what matters. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with unspoken feelings and tentative hopes. The sound of children's laughter drifted in from the corridor, not just their sons now, but other young patients who had come to the Thorn Imperial seeking treatment and hope. I've been thinking, Alex said finally, about us, about everything that happened, and everything that's happening now. Isabella felt her heart skip a beat. Oh? 8 years ago, I let my pride and my family's expectations drive away the best thing that ever happened to me. Then I let bitterness and revenge guide my actions, and it almost cost me everything again. He turned to face her fully. But somehow, through all my mistakes, you've created something beautiful. These boys, this center, this second chance. I don't deserve any of it. Alex, Isabella started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish. I'm not the same man who sent you that spiteful wedding invitation. I'm not even sure I'm the same man you knew 8 years ago, but I'd like the chance to be someone better, someone worthy of you and our sons. Before Isabella could respond, a commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Ethan burst into the office, his face flushed with excitement, Richard and Noah right behind him. Mom! Dad, I did it. I swam a whole lap without getting tired, Ethan announced triumphantly. The moment between Alex and Isabella paused, but didn't break. As they celebrated their son's achievement together, both knew their conversation wasn't over. It was just beginning, like so many other new chapters in their unexpectedly reunited family's story. 6 months after the failed wedding, the Thorn Imperial had become unrecognizable, in the best possible way. The once opulent casino floor now housed a state-of-the-art educational center, where children with heart conditions could continue their studies while receiving treatment. The famous high-roller suites had been converted into comfortable family accommodations, allowing parents to stay close to their children during long-term care. Alex sat in Dr. Chen's office, staring at the test results spread across her desk. Isabella gripped his hand tightly, her architect's eye unable to make sense of the medical charts and numbers before them. The experimental treatment is showing remarkable results in the boys, Dr. Chen explained, her excitement barely contained. Their cardiac function has improved by 30%. At this rate, they could be looking at a completely normal life expectancy. Relief flooded through Alex, but it was tempered by the next set of results Dr. Chen pulled out, his own. Unfortunately, your condition is proving more resistant to treatment. The years of unmanaged stress and lack of early intervention have made your case more complicated. How complicated? Isabella's voice was steady, but her grip on Alex's hand tightened. The next 6 months will be critical, Dr. Chen said gently. We need to be much more aggressive with your treatment plan, Alex. That means stepping back from work completely. Alex started to protest, but a sharp look from Isabella silenced him. They'd come too far, built too much together, to risk losing it all to his workaholic tendencies. Actually, he said slowly, I've been thinking about something. Isabella, remember that conversation we had about restructuring the company? She nodded, surprised by the sudden change in topic. The foundation idea? The Thorn hotels were built on the idea of escape, giving people a temporary haven from their problems, Alex explained to Dr. Chen. But what we're doing here is different. It's about facing problems head-on and finding real solutions. Maybe it's time to make that official. A knock at the door interrupted them. Richard entered, followed by the twins, who had just finished their daily therapy session. Sorry to interrupt, but the board members are arriving early for the emergency meeting." "Emergency meeting?" Isabella looked at Alex questioningly. He squeezed her hand. "I've called the entire board together. It's time to transform the Thorn Empire into something that matters more than profit margins." "Can we come?" Ethan asked eagerly. "Noah and I have ideas too." Alex smiled at his sons, marveling at how they'd inherited their mother's creative spirit and determination. "Actually, you two are an important part of this presentation." In the boardroom, tension crackled as Alex faced the assembled executives. These were men and women who had known him his entire life, who had watched him grow from Richard Thorn's heir apparent into something else entirely. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, 6 months ago, many of you thought the Thorn Empire was finished. Our stock had plummeted, our reputation was in shambles, and our future looked bleak." He paused, letting the words sink in. But something unexpected happened. While we were losing luxury tourists, we were gaining something far more valuable: hope. Isabella stepped forward, unveiling architectural renderings of the transformed hotel. The Thorn Imperial Children's Medical Center has already helped dozens of families. Our occupancy rates are actually higher than they were as a luxury resort, but more importantly, we're making a real difference in people's lives. "The numbers don't lie," Richard added, distributing financial reports. "Insurance companies and medical tourism have created a more stable revenue stream than casino operations ever did." The twins, dressed in matching suits for the occasion, stepped up to the presentation screen. "This is our school," Noah explained proudly, showing photos of the learning center. "Kids like us don't have to choose between getting better and having a normal life. And this is going to be the new research wing." Ethan pointed to Isabella's designs. "Dr. Chen says it could help kids all over the world." Alex watched his family working together, presenting their vision for the future, and felt a profound shift in his priorities. The empire he'd once been so desperate to protect seemed insignificant compared to the legacy they were building now. "I'm proposing we convert the entire Thorn hotel chain into a network of specialized medical centers," he announced. "Each property will focus on different types of long-term care, with the Imperial serving as our flagship cardiac center." Murmurs rippled through the board members. "What about the gaming licenses? The entertainment contracts?" someone asked. "Sell them," Alex said firmly. "Use the profits to fund research and patient care. It's time for the Thorn name to stand for something more than luxury and excess." "The shareholders won't like this," warned his CFO. "It's too radical a change." "Then they can sell," Isabella stepped in. "We'll buy back the shares ourselves if necessary. I'm putting everything I have into this, my savings, my architectural firm, everything." "As am I," Richard added. "It's time to build something that truly matters." The twins had moved to stand on either side of their father, their presence a powerful reminder of why this transformation was so vital. Alex looked at each board member in turn, his voice strong, despite his weakened heart. 8 months ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. I was wrong. True success isn't about building empires. It's about building futures. My sons taught me that. So did their mother." He reached for Isabella's hand. "The choice is yours. You can be part of this transformation or you can walk away. But the Thorn legacy is changing, starting today." The winter sun painted Las Vegas in shades of gold and rose, a stark contrast to the sterile white of the hospital room, where Alex lay connected to various monitors. The past month had been a roller coaster of medical interventions as his condition deteriorated, forcing him to finally step back and let others take control. Isabella hadn't left his side, somehow managing to run both the architectural projects and their growing medical network from a laptop beside his bed. The twins spent every afternoon after their therapy sessions with him, their card games and endless stories, bringing life to the otherwise clinical space. "Your latest numbers are encouraging," Dr. Chen announced, reviewing his charts. "The aggressive treatment seems to be working, though more slowly than we'd like. You need to continue resting." "Did you hear that, Dad?" Noah piped up from his perch on the window seat. "Doctor's orders, no sneaking work emails on your phone." Alex grinned sheepishly as Isabella confiscated his device. "Betrayed by my own son. He gets his sense of responsibility from me," Isabella teased, but her eyes were worried as she studied Alex's pale face. "Actually," Dr. Chen interjected, I have some news that might help you really rest. The research team has made a breakthrough using data from your family's cases. We've identified a new treatment protocol that could significantly improve outcomes for all genetic cardiomyopathy patients. The thing you've been testing on us? Ethan asked excitedly. The one that made me and Noah better? Dr. Chen nodded. Your responses to the treatment helped us refine the approach, and now with the data from your father's case, we understand why it works differently in adult patients. We're calling it the Thorne Protocol. The Thorne Protocol? Alex echoed weakly. Well, your family's contribution to this research has been invaluable, Dr. Chen explained. And with the Foundation's support, we'll be able to make this treatment available to families who couldn't otherwise afford it. Isabella squeezed Alex's hand. See? Sometimes the best revenge against life's cruel twists is to turn them into something beautiful. Speaking of beautiful things, Richard appeared in the doorway, looking more relaxed than he had in months. The first satellite center in Phoenix is ready to open. Catherine Ashcroft's Family Foundation has agreed to be a major donor. Catherine? Alex and Isabella said in unison. Richard smiled. Apparently, she was quite moved by what we've accomplished here. Her mother had a cousin with a similar condition who couldn't afford proper treatment. She wants to help make sure that doesn't happen to other families. The boys had abandoned their usual spots to crowd around Dr. Chen's tablet, examining their own test results with growing excitement. Look, Noah pointed at a chart. Our hearts are getting stronger every day. Just like our family, Ethan added wisely. Alex watched his sons, so bright, so resilient, so full of life, and felt tears prick at his eyes. His revenge plan had been born of bitterness and pride, but it had led him to something far more precious than vengeance. It had led him home. Isabella, he said softly, tugging her closer to his bed. I've been doing a lot of thinking during all this forced rest. Dangerous habit, she teased, but her eyes were soft. 8 years ago, I let my ego drive away the best thing in my life. Then I let bitterness drive me to try to hurt you, only to discover that what I thought was weakness, asking for help, admitting fault, showing vulnerability, was actually strength all along. The boys had gone quiet, watching their parents with undisguised interest. Even Dr. Chen and Richard seemed reluctant to leave. I know I'm not completely well yet, Alex continued. And I know we have a lot more work to do, with the medical centers, with our family, with everything. But I don't want to wait any longer to ask you something important. Isabella's breath caught as Alex reached for something Richard was suddenly holding out. A small velvet box that definitely hadn't been there a moment ago. Marry me, Alex said simply. Not for revenge, not for business, not for any reason, except that I love you. I love our sons. I love the life we're building together. Marry me because second chances like this are too precious to waste. The twins were practically vibrating with excitement. Say yes, Mom, they chorused. Isabella looked around the hospital room, at their children's shining faces, at Richard's proud smile, at Dr. Chen's barely concealed delight, and finally at Alex, who had lost an empire but gained a heart. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes! As their family erupted in cheers and the boys launched themselves onto the bed for a group hug, Alex held Isabella close, his heart monitor beeping a steady, strengthening rhythm. This, he realized, was what true success felt like. Not the cold triumph of revenge, but the warm victory of love, forgiveness, and healing, not just of hearts, but of souls. 1 year to the day after the wedding that never was, the Thorne Imperial's grand ballroom was once again filled with flowers and guests. But this time, everything was different. Instead of casino lights and crystal chandeliers, the space was bathed in natural sunlight, streaming through newly installed skylights. Children's artwork decorated the walls alongside medical research posters, and the guest list included as many doctors and patients as business executives. Isabella stood in what had once been the bridal suite, now converted into a comfortable family lounge. She watched her reflection in the mirror, hardly believing how much had changed in a year. Her wedding dress was simpler this time, an elegant ivory sheath that made her feel both beautiful and comfortable. But it was her smile that made the biggest difference, genuine, peaceful, full of joy. Mom? The twins poked their heads in, looking handsome in their matching suits. Dad's getting anxious out there. Grandpa Richard says his heart monitor is beeping faster. Isabella laughed. Tell your father that Dr. Chen cleared him for today's excitement, and he's not allowed to use his condition as an excuse to rush me." "I heard that." Alex appeared in the doorway, looking healthier than he had in months. The latest round of treatments had worked wonders, though he still had a long way to go. The boys ran to hug him, careful as always of the small monitor he still wore under his tuxedo. "You're not supposed to see the bride before the wedding," Isabella protested, but her heart wasn't in it. This wasn't about traditions or appearances anymore. This was about family. "I think we've already broken every rule in the book," Alex smiled, crossing the room to take her hands. "Besides, I needed to show you something before the ceremony." He pulled out a tablet, bringing up the morning's news headlines. "Thorne Medical Network announces breakthrough treatment protocol." Below was a photo of their family: Alex, Isabella, the twins, Richard and Dr. Chen, standing in front of the newly renovated hospital wing. "The FDA fast-tracked approval," Alex explained excitedly. "The Thorne protocol will be available in all our centers by the end of the month. Insurance companies are already signing agreements to cover it. Does this mean other kids like us can get better too?" Ethan asked, peering at the tablet. "Not just kids," Isabella squeezed Alex's hand. "Adults with the condition too. Your father's case helped them understand how to adapt the treatment for different age groups." "Speaking of treatment," Richard appeared in the doorway, "Dr. Chen is looking for her star patients. Something about final checks before the ceremony." The twins groaned good-naturedly, but went without protest, used to their regular medical routine. As they left with their grandfather, Alex pulled Isabella close, careful of her dress. "Having second thoughts?" he teased. "No secret children or life-altering medical conditions you need to tell me about?" "Just the usual," she played along. "Terminal case of loving you, chronic happiness syndrome, acute family satisfaction." "Sounds serious," he murmured, leaning in for a kiss. "Very," she agreed, meeting him halfway. A knock at the door interrupted them. Catherine Ashcroft stood there, looking elegant in a blue cocktail dress. "Sorry to interrupt, but the guests are all seated. And the children's choir is getting a bit restless." The children's choir had been the twins' idea. Young patients from the cardiac unit who wanted to sing at the wedding. Like everything else about this ceremony, it was unconventional but perfect. "Thank you for coming, Kate," Alex said sincerely. "And for everything else." Catherine smiled, genuine warmth replacing the bitterness of a year ago. "Thank you for showing me there are more important things than pride and appearances." The Phoenix Center is already changing lives. As Catherine left to take her seat, Isabella turned to Alex. "Ready to try this wedding thing again? Hopefully with fewer dramatic revelations this time?" "I don't know," he pretended to consider. "The last wedding's dramatic revelations worked out pretty well for me in the end." Isabella smoothed his tie, letting her hand rest over his heart. The steady beat under her palm was stronger now, thanks to the treatment protocol their family had helped develop. "Well," she said softly, "this time we're not hiding anything. No secrets, no revenge, no pretense. Just us, our boys, our family, and the future we're building together." Alex covered her hand with his. "I like the sound of that." The evening sun painted the Las Vegas sky in shades of pink and gold as the wedding reception moved to the Thorne Imperial's rooftop garden. What had once been a VIP party venue was now a peaceful oasis where patients and their families could find respite from their medical battles. Tonight it was filled with joy and celebration. The twins had appointed themselves unofficial masters of ceremony, introducing speakers and making sure everyone knew their family's story. And then, Noah was telling a group of captivated guests, Dad tried to get revenge by inviting Mom to his fake wedding, but it totally backfired because we were there. "And now we're one big happy family," Ethan chimed in, "helping other people with special hearts like ours." Isabella watched her sons from her seat at the main table, her heart full. Alex sat beside her, one hand intertwined with hers, while the other held his champagne glass, specially approved by Dr. Chen for one celebratory toast. Richard Thorne stood, tapping his glass for attention. The crowd quieted, turning to face the former hotel magnate who had embraced such radical change in his golden years. "A year ago," he began, "I thought I was watching my family's legacy crumble. The empire we'd built, the Thorne name we'd worked so hard to establish, it all seemed to be slipping away." He paused, looking at Alex and Isabella. "I was wrong. What I was actually watching was the birth of a greater legacy than I could have imagined. He gestured to the medical wing visible through the garden's glass walls. The Thorn name doesn't stand for luxury and excess anymore. It stands for hope, for healing, for second chances. My son taught me that sometimes our greatest failures can lead to our greatest victories if we're brave enough to learn from them. Alex squeezed Isabella's hand as his father continued. Today we're not just celebrating a wedding, we're celebrating a transformation of a business, of a family, and of hearts in every sense of the word. The Thorn Protocol isn't just saving lives medically, it's showing people that with love, support, and determination, any heart can heal. Dr. Chen rose next, holding up her own glass. As a doctor, I deal in scientific facts and medical data. But working with this family has taught me that some of the most powerful medicine doesn't come in pills or injections. It comes from love, from family, from the determination to turn personal challenges into hope for others. The twins had made their way back to their parents, settling into chairs on either side of them. Noah leaned against Isabella, while Ethan rested his head on Alex's shoulder, both boys tired but happy. "I'd like to propose a toast," Richard concluded, "to Alex and Isabella Thorn, whose love story reminded us all that revenge is no match for redemption. To my grandsons, Ethan and Noah, whose courage inspires everyone they meet. And to everyone who has been part of this journey, our medical team, our patients and their families, and everyone who believed in our vision of transformation." As glasses clinked and congratulations echoed across the garden, Alex turned to Isabella. "Happy?" he asked softly. She looked around at their gathered family, not just blood relatives, but the entire community they'd built. Children from the cardiac unit played with the twins, while their parents chatted with doctors and nurses. Catherine Ashcroft was deep in conversation with Dr. Chen about expanding the treatment program. Richard watched it all with genuine pride, no longer mourning his lost empire, but celebrating this new legacy. "More than happy," Isabella replied. "Grateful. A year ago you invited me to your wedding, hoping to show me everything I'd lost. Instead, we both found everything we never knew we needed. We found each other," Alex agreed, "and a purpose bigger than ourselves." The sun was setting over Las Vegas, casting long shadows across the city. From this height, they could see the other hotels that would soon become medical centers, each specializing in different types of care. The Thorn name still crowned the skyline, but now it stood for something far more valuable than luxury. "Dad," the twins called out. "Come on, they're serving the cake." Alex stood, offering his hand to his wife. "Shall we? Our sons await." Isabella took his hand, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath their clasped fingers. "Our family awaits," she corrected gently. As they joined their children and their community under the desert stars, Isabella thought about the strange path that had led them here. A revenge plan had backfired into redemption. A crumbling empire had transformed into a network of healing, and a broken heart, literally and figuratively, had found not just healing but purpose. The Thorn legacy would live on, not in glittering hotels and high-stakes casinos, but in the lives touched, the families helped, and the hearts healed. And at its center would always be their own family, bound together not by obligation or appearance, but by love, understanding, and the kind of strength that comes only from facing life's greatest challenges together. "Ready for our next chapter?" Alex whispered in her ear as they watched their sons attempt to sneak extra pieces of cake. Isabella smiled, thinking of all the plans they had. Expanding the medical network, advancing the research, helping more families find hope and healing. But mostly, she thought of the simple joy of facing it all together. "With you and our boys," she replied. "Always."